Okay, so we are here. Good evening, everyone. I hope you all are doing fine. I hope you can see me clearly, and also, if you can hear me clearly, you can just write clear in the chat box, then we'll begin. Right. And okay, let me see how many of you are here. Okay, couple of people all already there. Nice. And let me see. Okay, guys, come on quickly. It's very important because we need to finish this thing right. Romantic criticism. We already discussed a lot of stuff. Last night we talked about Wordsworth, Coleridge, right? Sade, and also we talked about a couple of more like Keats and Lamb, Hazlitt. All these already we have discussed, and today we're going to continue our session. And today we're going to talk about P.B. Shelley. So, Shelley and Keats, critic, later romantic critics, and they have written a lot of stuff like, Keats' negative capability. And as I told you in our previous session, negative capability is something, a kind of, art. And how does he define that? He says that, just imagine, you're reading a story, or something kind of kind of mystery story, and you are kind of eager to find out who is the main character, or who's the protagonist, and what kind of plot is that. All these mystery are there. You are in the uncertain phase. You don't know what's gonna happen. Instead of finding out from somewhere, right, what you do, you just keep reading it, because that creates what, a kind of pleasure while reading those, you know negative capability. And it's exactly happened with the poet or playwright also. Like he said about the Hamlet, right? Hamlet's uncertainties. Or Shakespeare, while he was writing that play, he was in the state of negative capability, certain about it happened. So while he was writing, then everything was coming in the place. So that's what our negative capability is, according to Keats. So today we are going to talk about our PB Shelley. We already had a discussion on PB Shelley about his poems and all, that you can go and watch. And today we're going to only focus on the criticism part, especially the defense of poetry, right? And as you know, he's English poet, especially later romantic poet, and he influenced poets like Browning, Swinburne, Hardy, and Yeats. Right, so all these things already we have discussed in our previous session, and all these works also we had kind of depth discussion that you can go and watch. And our focus is today on a defense of poetry. So, guys, if you can hear me clearly, you should write clear in the chat box. And one more thing, whoever is there online live with me, you can interact with me in the chat box, and along with that, just give me a like, and also if possible give comment also, right? And subscribe if you haven't subscribed the channel, whoever is a new uh, aspirant here. Anyway, let's move on and talk about defense of poetry. So in that, they usually ask one question, and it's kind of certain. Especially they ask in chronological order, that is absolutely coming in your way. Remember 1821 but published in 1840, but you have to remember this date and also this date, 1840, very important. So this essay 21, and it was actually published posthumously in 1840, and in essay Letters from Abroad. Right, translations and fragments by Edward Moxon in London. What you have to remember here, the date, and it contains what Shelley's famous assertion that poets are acknowledged legislator of the world. It's very important, you always get one question on that, and according to him, what poets are the acknowledged legislators of the world. So let me simplify this for you. So poets are like, they influence thing, right? Suppose, you know uh, they're not like a judge or the boss, they make rules or anything, right? Poets, they influence life in the world, right? Whatever they write, and that actually creates impression in the readers, and they follow that, and these rules naturally they make it. So they are actually the real, legislator of the world, but unacknowledged. They are not acknowledged, but they are unacknowledged. Very important that you should know about it. So again, when we talk about that Shelley's idea, poets are the acknowledged legend. So like, they create something, with their ideas, and they usually, shape how people think and feel, even, if they aren't recognized like, superpower, like lawmakers or leaders, right? They are creative, and they create these ideas, and they shape people, like us and everybody, out there, to think and feel all this, right? So imagine, like this whole world is, like a school, and poets are like the student there, who make up like, cool stories, or they might create songs or poems, right? And these stories and these songs help people sing, see things in a new way, or kind of, feel different emotion, like they can create, in you or in the reader, like the kindness of feeling, a bravery, or maybe fairness, or just, right? Even though you make these rules, teacher does, right? So these are the students, right? The poets in charge, and what they say and imagine changes the way you, me, and everyone thinks and behave. So poets quietly influence how the world works, just like how ideas in a story can change how you think, about things. They inspire people without, to be a boss, right? So they are unacknowledged legislators of the world. Very important that you should know, right? So I think it's clear for you, and if it is not clear, you can just write in the chat box not clear. I hope it's clear, because I have already kind of, break it down for you, because that's very important. That's gonna, you're definitely gonna see this in your exam. Anyway, one of the important thing that you should know, that it was actually a response of what Thomas Law Peacock's The Four Ages of Poetry, right? And Shelley's argument for poetry is what, written within the context of romanticism. And one of the another important thing that he said, that ethical science, right, arranges the elements which poetry has created, right? So if you just break it down into a, very simple language, it would be like, uh, like, any poetry is the foundation for kind of your ideas, or maybe moral ideas, and those moral values, and your ethical science or the philosophy, these organizes and refines those ideas into system, of right and wrong. And if you take an example, like a rainbow, right? So you connect all these blocks, like suppose, think of poetry as the first spark that lights up big, like new ideas about life, about kindness, and how people, how me and you should treat each other. Right. So these ideas are like building blocks, and that actually is ethical science. Is like someone coming up and arranging these blocks, to help us understand rules about being good or fair. Right. So poetry creates these ideas, and ethical science puts them together, and in a way, what that helps us to understand right from wrong, making the world a kind of, better place to live in. Right. So that what he means, very important that they ask actually question on it also. And it leads what, uh, to moral civil life, and poetry acts in a way that awakens and enlarges, remember, awakens and enlarges the mind, your mind itself, by rendering it, you know the receptacle of thousand unapprehended combination of thought. So basically he means these, the same thing, that it creates ideas and these, a combination of thought that inspire you, right? So Shelley says language also reflects the human impulse for order, and language reproduces those rhythmic and orderly in human experience. Harmony and unity are instinctively embraced in creativity. Simple to understand this, right? So again, every man in the infancy of art, remember, every man like me and you, in our infancy of art, observes an order which approximates what, less close, which highest delight results. Right, very important. And remember, this faculty of approximation, remember, allows the observer to experience the beautiful by establishing a relation between the highest pleasure and its cause. So these quotes are very important because they might come up, not only this one is important anyway, that's the base of the thing, and you usually get question from it if they ask go also. Right. So language follows what, poetic percepts of order, harmony, and unity. Okay. Other thing you can just see in the essay itself, like admiration of beauty has an important what, social aspects, and very important. They recently asked a question based on that in your exam. In 2024 they have asked this question: what the mind in creation is as fading coal, which some invisible influence like an inconstant wind awakens what to transitory brightness. Very important, they have asked. So remember, a fading coal is what, the mind is creation is as a fading coal. So they have asked question on it, and it is from Shelley's defense of poetry. And communication extends beyond self-awareness to self-evolution. Again, the same thing, social activities, poetry and arts, they usually involve in where, your social activity. And Shelley praised Plato and Jesus for imaginative use of language. They imagined the inconceivable through their linguistic ability, and that language expresses desire of beauty and delight. Shelley believed what? The same thing that I told you. Right, poets are the author of language, music, dance, architecture, statuary, and painting, and poets are the institutors of law. The same thing that an acknowledged legislator of the world. Right, social and linguistic order is not the sole product of the rational faculty. What else you can see here? Language is arbitrarily produced by the imagination. It reveals, the before unapprehended relationship of things and perpetuate their apprehension of higher beauty and truth. What does he mean here by that? Uh, you know, it's like, this phrase that you can see here is this, that suggests that poetry helps people, these like me and you, to see new connections between things that they didn't before kind of realized or noticed before. And it actually reveals what deeper beauty and truth in life. So in a simple example, if you just put it in a simple word, it will be like, you know imagine this whole world is like a puzzle, and sometimes we don't see things, how certain pieces kind of fit together, and poetry help us to understand these new connections really, and between these things, like how, very good example is, I can give you example of rainbow, and happiness, and it can both be connected, right? So when you see rainbow, and if poet sees rainbow, he will connect it as a happiness, and these goes through the period, and when you see rainbow, you will feel happiness. So these small influences there in you, right? So once we see these connections, it help us to understand these hidden beauty and truth about the world, and what poetry keeps those ideas kind of alive in our world. And it's like poetry help us find magic in every single things, right? Everyday things. Right. So that's what he mean. And very important phrase, as I told you before, poets are the acknowledged legislator of the world. And it suggests his awareness of the profound ambiguity inherent in linguistic means, what, which he considered at once as an instrument of intellectual freedom and a vehicle for political and social subjugation. So guys, your Shelley is completed, and they're not gonna ask anything out of this, so everything is there. And as I told you, if you want note, you can just write notes in the chat box or in the comments, or you can just simply WhatsApp me, right? Next is Charles Lamb. We already talked and in a deep depth discussion that you can go and find in our previous session. We are not gonna go one more time, but what you have to know, that he has written a lot of things, like he collaborated with his sister, Tales from Shakespeare, an essay of Elia, last essay of Elia. We have covered every single stuff, and especially those essays that they have asked. Right, they have asked a question on my relation, like who has written my relations. So it was Charles Lamb. So this kind of question is there. So when we solve question, you will understand, right? And William Hazlitt, same thing, we did all depth discussion that you should go and watch. Okay, and everything we have already discussed. The characters of Shakespeare, we discussed about a view of the English stage, the round table, on the English poets, right? My first acquaintance with the English poets, very important that you usually get a question on that, right? And he said in the that thing that about Coleridge, that only person I ever knew was answered the idea of a man of a genius. Right. Also lectures on the dramatic literature. These all things we have discussed. So you can go back and watch. Just like 3 or 4 days ago, we had this, had discussion on it. You can just search it in our channel, Romantic Period, and you'll get everything there. Okay, Thomas Dickenson, same thing. We have discussed already. And he is famous for what? The Confessions of an English Opium Eater. And not only that, but in our romantic criticism, what is important on the knocking at the gate in Macbeth. Very important. An essay on the poets and other English writer. So there he said, like, there is first the literature of knowledge, and secondly the literature of power. And what the function, the first is to teach, the function of the second is to move. The first is a rudder, and the second an oar or sail. We have already discussed every single stuff here, right? So that you can go and watch. Today, what we left is all these questions. So we'll solve it one by one. One of the thing here, one of the original members of Johnson's Literary Club. Remember the club. It is known as the club also, and it is founded by Johnson and Joshua Reynolds. Right, and what it is asking, not a member. So Burke was there, Hawking was there, Goldsmith was there, and who was not there? John Dryden. Right, because he belongs to that new classical era and kind of before Johnson. So obviously he should not be there, right? Anyway, let's move on. Uh, in which year was Edmund Burke's inquiry into the origin of our ideas of the sublime and beautiful power? And why we are taking all these questions? In our previous session, we discussed about Edmund Burke and all other. So remember, especially the date 57. Very important. Not you should not forget. Again, some of the work also is written like inquiry into the origin of ideas of the sublime and the beautiful, very important, and arrange the following writer chronologically with their years of birth. So it's kind of very easy to answer because, as you know, Boswell definitely should come after Johnson, right? And Richard Brinsley kind of very at the end, right? So that also be there because he was in the age of Pope and also romantic, especially the early romantic period time. So remember, and who should be the first either uh, before Johnson, either will be Gibbon or Burke. So first is Samuel Johnson, then obviously Edmund Burke, then Edward Gibbon, and then James Boswell, and at the end we have E. So anyway, if you just find out that C and E, where is C and E in two, then even with that you can answer. If you only know two people, their life span, right? And which of the following books were published in the year of 1791? So 1791 is very important period, only because couple of things: James Boswell, The Life of Samuel Johnson's, and what? The Rights of Man. And then who replied it? The Rights of Women by Wollstonecraft, right? A Vindication of Rights of Woman, that I already told you, Mary Wollstonecraft. Who wrote A Vindication of Rights of Man? Paine, right? Easy to answer. From the previous question, we already got the answer. Okay, next question. Which among the following are not, remember, are not true about feminist movement? Not true. Okay, so Mary Wollstonecraft, okay, A Vindication of Rights of Women, okay, she has written, challenges the notion that women exist only to please men. That is definitely so, because when you read the first page of it, you will get the idea that actually women exist only to please men, right? An issue of women suffrage, of course, uh, dominated international feminism for more than 50 years. That is also true. Not kind of, that the female eunuch was and published by African writer named Sarah Mae. Definitely no. Everybody knows the female eunuch is, the writer of female eunuch is who? Our Garmin Care. Very important. You always get when we talk about feminism, we will discuss her also. Again, Kate Millet's, okay, Sexual Politics. Definitely, she is written. Broaden the term politics in to include all power structure relation. Definitely, it's true. And the second wave of feminism was led by, definitely kind of nonsense here, right? It actually started with who? Mary Wollstonecraft. Okay, so that's here. Next question, let's talk about it. Arrange the following text chronologically. Date of publication. So of course this will be later, this will be beginning, this will be later, this will also be later, because they are the later. So you have to find out which one of them is the first, right? So obviously Maria by Mary Wollstonecraft is there. Then very late, the Frankenstein by Mary Shelley came. Then you can just put A Room of Fun's on and then the both. So easy to answer, right? Even if you know one. So this can be eliminated. C is there, then the B, C and A, this could be our answer, because B cannot be, because it is in the 20th century, right? Especially, you know, the period between the wars, Virginia Woolf published, right, all of her works. Okay, who among the following refers Byron, monstrous combination of horror and mockery, lewdness and impiety? Easy to answer. We have discussed while we were discussing, in our previous session, Robert Sadi. And where a vision of judgment. And Byron replied with the vision of judgment. Easy to answer, right? And which one of the following is not true about lyrical ballads? It turns English poetry away from the social and intellectual sophistication. Of course, he was against, neoclassical style of, writing, especially they belong, more focused into making it beautiful, and very kind of artificiality was there in neoclassicism. So much rhyming and technique system was there. He was kind of against it. He said the language should be for the common man, right? So that is easy to answer. It is very particular about the form, and said definitely he was against it, right? So not true is that thing. Easy to answer. In the second one, it you already found it, and it's a manifesto for romantic. True. It takes poetry to confine reason and unravished and unspoiled what beauties of nature. So nature is there, definitely true, right? Okay. So who said that there can be and there ought to be difference between the language of prose and metrical composition? So none other than our Wordsworth said it in the lyrical ballads. Okay, next question. Inane gaudiness is a phrase used in connection with neoclassical. The same thing that I told you just earlier about, that they were against neoclassicism. Who was it? William Wordsworth, right? And that actually means what? To criticize the artificiality of neoclassicism. Recent question it is, so you should uh, kind of pay more attention. Again, the chronological order, easy to answer, right? uh, Culture, anarchy, lives of poets, so easy. A should be the fun essay of dramatic poesy, so A is there. Into these two you can eliminate. Then obviously it should be the lives of the poet. So where is A and D? a A and D together is here, so this also can be eliminated. Easy to answer, right? Okay, again, chronological order: apology, rhetoric, preface. So remember, rhetoric came first. We have been keep discussing about it. If they ask about the art of rhetoric, you should understand that it is, way before apology of poetry, right? Especially like 13 to 4 to 5 years, I guess. So apology for poetry comes next. So where is B and A? B and A only in one option. Easy, you can remove it, right? Who among the following used untranslatable? Very easy. St. Coleridge. We talked about it in our session. Next is what? Match list 1 to list 2. Negative capability, Keats. Sweetness and light, Matthew Arnold. Exemplastic is our Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Remember those glue, all these dots connected with things that makes up a poem or a story or a rose of a feeling of, feeling a reader. That is your exemplastic. Dissociation of sensibility is by T.S. Eliot. Anyway, that we'll talk about when we discuss what 20th century criticism. Okay, again, egoistical sublime, as I told you, that somebody has, like, I want this, I want that, all these desire are there, so they are kind of the boss. Who said it? Samuel Taylor Coleridge, right? Willing suspension of uh, then what? Pleasure of imagination, easy to answer. Touchstone, easy to answer. Willing of suspension of disbelief. As I told you, what does he mean? Like when we go into the movie, right, and we see some fiction or science fiction movie, and we, at that moment, We know that it's a kind of lie, right? Or all of these are fiction, but we are ready to believe. So those suspension of disbelief is willing to believe, though, believe those disbeliefs, right? So that is a willing suspension of disbelief. Who among the following acknowledged what that poetry is formed from the same element as prose? The difference lies in the combination of three elements. What are the three elements? Remember, fancy and imagination. Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Again, next question is, the poet describes an ideal perfection brings the whole soul of a man into activity with the subordinate faculty to, you know, each other according to their relative worth dignity. Again, Coleridge in where the chapter number 14. Are not relevant. Not relevant. The first volume of the text recounts the author's friendship with Robert Southey. It is actually true. Okay. Uh, it is asking not, but remember, but William Blake was not there. So definitely it's wrong. Another edition of the text was published later in 1847 with his daughter Shara's appended note. And it is a work by S.T. Coleridge in 2 volume. True. In this I hope you can see it. All the options not coming all. Anyway, in this work, Coleridge discusses the difference between fancy, that is our true. In the first volume, Coleridge acknowledges his teacher and philosopher, including Aristotle. And this is wrong. So these two are there, A and E. Right. Now let's move on. Question number. These are the explanation. If you want it, you can just write notes in the chat box or in your comment. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Again, monster combination of horror and mockery. We already discussed Robert Southey. Which among the following works is not written by P.B. Shelley? The Vision of Judgment is by Byron, right? Our Vision is by Southey. Right, easy to answer. Not very difficult questions, right? These days. Only if you have attended the session, then you will find everything easy. Which statements among the following are not relevant? Again, the same question is coming. Why? Okay. Which of the following poets defended poetry against Platonism? As we know, first one is our Philip Sidney and the same P.B. Shelley. Easy to answer. Plato wrote what? Aristotle wrote Rhetoric, Plato wrote Symposium, Sidney wrote Apology, Shelley wrote Defense. Arrange the works in chronological order. Chronological. So, Leviathan, Brown, Walter Pater, Culture, and so definitely this, you know, should be, before Matthew Arnold's or Walter Pater's or even P.B. Shelley, right? Thomas Brown, The Anatomy of Melancholy comes first, B, then C, easy to answer, right? Then we have Shelley, E, then we have Matthew Arnold, A, then at the end we have Walter Pater in the Victorian period. So it'll be D. Easy to answer, right? Okay, great. Let's move on next question. Arrange the following terms in chrono. Now this time we have to arrange these terms in chronological order. Dissociation of sensibility. What? Eliot, right? T.S. Eliot. Unreliable narrator. Egotistical sublime. Remember, we just talked about from the Keats. So that should theater of cruelty very late. So definitely it's gonna be at the end. Right. So this is our first. Then we can just move to our dissociation of sensibility. Then at the end it'll be what? Our theater of cure. Where is D in the first? So here is D. So this is all in these. So this could be because a theater of cruelty should be at the end. So this can be no. So these two, from these two, D D. So D should be the first. Now when it is, the from these points, elimination, if it doesn't work, then you should kind of know, right? So romantic criticism, as we know, egotistical sublime, sensibility, T.S. Eliot, theater of cruelty, in and unreliable narrator is by Wu, Wayne C. Booth. Okay. Next question given below are two. The term negative capability, coined by True. While analyzing the term of dissociation of sensibility, T.S. Eliot proclaimed that Hamlet is an artistic failure. So one is true, and uh, second is false. And why it is false actually? Hamlet in his problem, most certainly an artistic failure. Okay, again, next question, negative capability. Easy to answer. Sweetness, light, Matthew Arnold. Exemplastic, Coleridge, dissociation of sensibility. T.S. Eliot. Right. So, all these questions are kind of easy. Again, the same thing is coming one more time. Why it is coming again and again? Anyway, pleasure of imagination, Joseph Addition, touchstone, Matthew Arnold, willing dispensations, believe, egoistic sublime is by. Okay, next question. Match the following: George Orwell, Why I Write, Charles Lamb, On the Cannabis, very famous. B and 4, where is B and 4? In 2, so these two you can eliminate. Then Why I Write is by George Orwell, where is A and 2? And 2 in that option. Everything sorted out, right? Elia, published in where? London Magazine. We already discussed, you can go back and check. And remember, all these questions, if you want to solve one more time, you can just write what PYQ in the chat box in the comment. I'll get back to you there. Okay, chronological order is Steele, Dryden, Lamb, and all. Right, so definitely Francis Bacon the first, then we have Dryden, then we have Steele, then we have Lamb, and at the end we have Matthew Arnold, because he is Victorian, and Charles Lamb is what? Romantic. Right. Again, non-fictional prose writer, their year of birth. So in birth, of course, this guy would be the first again. Where is in? So even if you know one, you will be able to answer the rest. Right. What is the correct again about the text? Apology should be the first. If there is no rhetoric, no, there is no rhetoric, then B should be the first. Again, the same answer. Right. William Hatter's of Shakespeare is by Lamb. Thomas Love Peacock is imaginary conversation, I guess. Walter Savage Landor, right? Specimen of English is by Lamb, and character of Hazlitt. Carol Grange, Thomas Love Peacock. Kind of very difficult question, right? Sometime you might get these kind of questions. Which of the following were written by Love Peacock? Love Peacock is famous for Nightmare Abbey, very important. And what else is written? The Spirit of Age is not by him, and Headlong Hall. These two works is written, right? Okay. My first acquaintance, very easy to answer. Who wrote it? William Hazlitt. The only person I answered, Man of Genius, about the Coleridge. Easy to answer. Who wrote the essay My First Acquaintance? Easy. An essay on the principal human action was written by Hazlitt. Again, match the list with the list 2, and the second sex is by where? CN4 is where? In 1. So easy to answer even if you know the one thing, right? Okay. Next question, 43. There is first literature, secondly the literature of power, function to teach, function second. It is very easy. It is Thomas de Quincey, we just discussed, right? Which among the following are the titles of the section in Thomas de Quincey, the English male coach? Very important. They have asked question based on that. Remember, three part it has. Okay, and these parts are what? The glory of motion, is it there? The glory of motion is there, but not mobility. Okay, and then we have what? The vision of sudden death. As you can see here, the vision of second death and the dream fog founded on the preceding, right? We have already discussed it, that you should go and watch anyway. Okay guys, so we are done today. We have already discussed a lot of stuff, and I hope you enjoyed the session. And even if you want all these notes, what you have to do, just write notes in the chat box, or if you want to enroll into the PYQ session, these with explanation, write PYQ in the chat box. And before you go, like the video, share if possible, and of course write a comment. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe the channel. Okay, that's all you can do, and I'll keep continue giving you new material. And we are on a journey, a kind of odyssey journey, that we are going to finish our literature. So odyssey, of English literature, that's what we're gonna do. We are going to cover every single stuff, that you don't have to go anywhere. You can watch all these videos, solve all those PYQs, and these are very important session that you should not miss. Anyway, thank you so much. Good night and take care.